Hello and welcome to the third in our series of webinars on RapidDeploy version 4.0 basics. And today we are going to extend what we've learned in the first two webinars by combining our projects that we've already created together to create either a deployment plan or a linked deployment. So let's go ahead and log into RapidDeploy. And if we go and have a look at our projects, we can see that we've got the two projects we created, one in each of the two previous demonstrations. And what we're going to do first of all is we're going to create a third project to link these two projects together. So I'm going to go into Add Project Wizard, and I'm going to first of all create a project. I'm just going to call it Parent Project. You would use a more appropriate name for your project. Okay, I'm going to leave mostly everything as the default. I'm going to create a new target because we need a deployment target to be able to deploy to. So I'm going to call this localhost Linux, which is the server that we already have defined. I'm going to pick dev as the environment name, and I'm going to give it an application name of file system and scripts, since we're going to first of all check some file systems and then run a script. I'm not going to give this a template, I don't need one for this project. And skip project groups, and we'll create this project. Okay, so we've created a parent project. I'm now going to go ahead and edit that project and really update the orchestration, so alter the steps that we perform inside this project. I'm going to add a new task. I'm going to go down to the RapidDeploy tree menu view, and I'm going to select Run RD Deployment Task. I'm going to add this to our set of tasks. Now if we go and edit this task, we need to specify a URL. So what this task is going to do is it's going to make a call back into RapidDeploy and call a different project with a different environment as part of this particular job. So we're currently running on localhost 9090/midvision, and that's the correct URL in there. Now we need to supply an authentication token so that when we make a call back into RapidDeploy, the user can be authenticated as a user that is both allowed access to RapidDeploy and also has access to the project that we're now going to deploy. So to do this, we go onto the command line and we go into our Midvision RapidDeploy installation, and we cd into the tools directory. And in the tools directory, we can see that there is a script called run web service encryptor.sh. We're going to run that. We enter the username. We're currently logged in as mvadmin. And then we enter the mvadmin password, which by default is mvadmin. Okay, and we get this authentication token. I'm going to copy that, and I'm just going to paste it into here. And then I'm going to select the first project that we want to run a deployment for, a linked deployment. And this is the file system demo 40 project. And we had a server name for that, which was the same as the server we have set up for this one, which is localhost Linux. The environment name I'm going to choose was file system, and the application name was application 1. We're not going to specify a package name, which means that it will always choose the latest package. Now we can also choose to run this task either synchronously or asynchronously, and run asynchronously is currently set to false, so this task will be run synchronously in our task list. Okay, allow failed package allows us to choose whether or not a package that has previously failed a deployment will be allowed to be redeployed via this call back into RapidDeploy, and in this case we're just going to say true. So I'm going to save that, and now we have our linked deployment job. So this project is calling another downstream project. Of course, we could add other tasks here to do various other jobs in this deployment, and in fact all I'm going to do is add another run RD deployment task to call the scripts demo project. So I'm going to edit this. Firstly, I'm going to change the name of this task to be file system. I'll tick that. And then I'm going to copy this task. I'm going to change the name of this task to be script runner. So we now have two tasks, and I'm going to edit this task, the second task, the script runner task. We'll keep the authentication token and the URL the same, but we need to change the name of the project now. This is now script demo 40. The server name remains the same, localhost Linux. We're running everything locally at the moment. The environment name is dev, and the application name, and you might remember this from the previous webinar, is blue circle. Okay, I'm going to save that. So we now have the file system followed by the script runner projects and a specific environment for each of them. Now we're going to go over to packages, and actually we're going to create a package. We need a package. We only ever need one package if we're just calling downstream projects, because we're not really deploying any resources in this project. We're just using this project as a container for other projects. I'll refresh that. Okay, so now we can kick off a deployment of this job. I'm going to go to the New Jobs panel. I'm going to go to Parent Project. I'm going to select the file system and scripts, and I'm going to skip to finish, and I'm going to start the job. Okay, and that job is going to run. And we can go to, we can see here that this job is actually running. We can see that it's completed the first part of the job. We can always go to previous jobs and see how far it's got. So it's done the first one, the file system demo, and then after a short period of time it will call the second job, which is the script demo job. Just refresh this page, and there we can see the script demo job has appeared. So in this way what we've done is we've effectively called two downstream project targets from one project. Okay, so there is another way to do this in RapidDeploy, which sits above the projects, and that's called a deployment plan. This allows us to aggregate a number of projects together in a plan of projects. So in order to create a deployment plan, we just run a job in the normal way. So we go to Jobs, New Job, we select the first project and target that we want to deploy, and then we select the next project and target that we want to deploy, and so on. So I'm just choosing the two that we had previously selected using the linked deployments, and I can reorder these as I wish, and particularly if this becomes a long list you might want to reorder those. And then I can select next. On this panel I can choose the version that I want to deploy of each of the projects, and I, as usual, can select from all of the previous versions that have been created. We'll discuss these features here in a later webinar, On the next page, we can add some dependencies between the target deployments. So by default, the jobs will all deploy in parallel. So each of these two jobs would run together asynchronously, but we can make them synchronous by adding some dependency between them. So I can simply here add 1 as the predecessor to number 2, and in this case number 2 won't happen until number 1 is completed. Of course, if we have a long list, we can add more dependencies so that various jobs will run at various times. I can also say, do I want the next job to continue based on the failure scenario of the first job? So if the first job fails, then don't carry on with the next one, or do. And then on this panel, I can add some manual executions. And what this means is I can require between jobs running that somebody logs in and approves the next job to run. So in this case, I'm going to add a manual execution on the script demo. So in this case, after the file system demo is completed, but before the script demo starts, I'll be required to log in and approve that second deployment. Here I can provide a manual timeout, which says that after the job has been sitting waiting for a manual execution for a particular amount of time, what should I do? I can specify the time. Blank means I'll wait forever, or I can specify a number of minutes. And then this column specifies what we do at the end of that timeout should that be reached. Do I continue at the end of the timeout as if the user had clicked OK, or do I cancel? And in this column I can also add some scheduling, and this is just rather like a cron tab scheduler. You can add repeating schedules or whatever you want, so that these jobs, for example for scripts running, maybe house cleaning, housekeeping jobs, etc., can run periodically over time. And then we go to the final panel, and here we could normally just start this job, but I'm actually going to save this as a job plan. And I'm just going to call it File System and Scripts. And I'll save that. And so we can rerun this plan as many times as we like. And I'm just now going to run it. And this really just puts us back into that job creation panel, but with everything pre-filled in. So I can just skip through. I have to go through and at least select the versions, because normally when we create a job plan and we want to rerun it multiple times, it's quite likely that we'll want to replace or change the version of the projects that we run. So this gives us the option to do so. I'm not going to today because I've just created this. I'm going to skip to finish, and I'm going to start that job. We'll see here that the first job is now queued up and is running, the file system demo 40 job, and that's completed very quickly as we expect, with the same results as we had when we showed this in the first webinar. And now we can see that the second job is now also queued up and ready to run, but in this case we have the status waiting for us to approve this job. And as a user I can do that, so I'm going to click on the action to resume the job, and that job is now resumed. I can of course flag an email to be sent to various users or groups of users to remind them or to inform them that they need to log on and do that approval. And that job completed successfully. Okay, so that's shown two ways of running or combining jobs together in a job plan or a linked deployment. Now for the job plan, we saw that we put a halt task in between the jobs to allow a user to log on manually. Well, how would we do that in a linked deployment? Well, if we go back to our projects, inside this parent project, what we could do, or in fact in any project, inside the orchestration, we can add a new task. And this task is called a halt task. Let's specify this halt task. I'm just going to move that up. And what this task does is it halts the execution on the target server and waits for a user input to say, yes, now it's okay to carry on. Now this can be quite useful in the scenario, for example, where I'm running a number of jobs on a server, and when I get to a particular point on that server running those jobs, for example installing a database or some other kind of critical task, and I want somebody to check that or run some manual piece that can't be scripted or can't be put into RapidDeploy, and then get the job to carry on after that. And this is the perfect way of doing that. So we have a timeout here. This timeout is a value in seconds that will wait for this task to complete. Again, if we specify 0, then it will wait forever. This is a notification message that is sent to any user who's specified in the settings of this job to say that this needs to that they need to take some action, and what we do if the timeout is exceeded. Do we continue or do we end execution? Well, we'll set that timeout to some high value and we'll save it. And if you want to see where the emails are going to go, then you need to enable email here and specify some email addresses. Emails will always be notified at the end of the deployment, but they will also be notified at various points in the deployment if you put a halt task in. Okay, so let's try running that job again. Right, so we're now running that job, and it's going to run the RD deployment task file system first, which we can see has in fact run through. We'll just wait for this now to come up. And we can see now that this task has gone amber and it's halted at this point. And all we now have to do is log in. The user logs in, comes to this panel, the running jobs panel, and clicks resume job. Then the job is resumed and we can see the next job running. Okay. And that concludes this webinar. Hopefully today we've shown how you can link deployments together from other deployments. So at any point in a deployment job, you can call out to another deployment job, either synchronously or asynchronously. We've also shown how we can have a construct above projects that allow us to call many different projects together, and we can organize how those projects are called, either calling them synchronously or asynchronously in parallel, and we can leave manual intervention in between those jobs, both between jobs and also during a job, by the use of manual execution or the halt task. Hopefully this has been a useful webinar to demonstrate those features, and I hope you'll come back soon and see the next webinar in the series, where we'll be looking at some more complex deployments with some external products such as WebSphere. Thank you very much. Goodbye.